Hello, my name is Jennifer Bolton, and I am here to discuss managing emotions, what that means, how it can be utilized, and how it affects us in our daily lives. There are three major aspects to today's discussion: bioresponses, mindfulness, and managing emotions. Bioresponses are the way our bodies react to perceived threats. This is controlled by the limbic system and the amygdala, which are wired for our survival. It's an automatic response, like increased heart rate, sweaty palms, dizziness, or faintness. The first major bioresponse is fight. Imagine being attacked by a wild animal. Some people will respond by standing their ground and fighting back. A third response is to freeze. When your body senses a threat, it shuts down, perhaps leaving you unable to speak, to move, or to get out of the way of the perceived threat. Have you ever gotten in front of a group of people to speak, and then when you get there, you can't think of what to say? A fourth response that's less discussed is to appease. An example of appease would be that your boss tells you to work on a project that no one likes, and you give in, knowing that you may be under-equipped to handle it, but you do it because it's easier than pushing back at the boss. You gain nothing, but others will gain from your decision. So, how do we respond to these bioresponses? By being mindful. Mindfulness helps us to retrain our brain to respond to threats in a more conducive way. Mindfulness means being present in the moment, aware of the situation, and not letting our past experience create judgment in the present. One way of doing that is to practice the step exercise. Let's set up a scenario. You are planning to meet an old friend for coffee, but at the last minute they say they can't be there. You have already arrived, and you are frustrated by this revelation as you drove across town just for this meeting at your favorite coffee house. First, stop. Take a pause. Put the car in park. Next, take a deep breath and pause your reaction. Third, evaluate. Think about what is going on. Could your friend have had something happen that they couldn't avoid? Is it worth it to let your emotions hijack your outing to the coffee house? Finally, proceed. With this new information, think about how to move forward. Perhaps stay and enjoy a coffee and then send a note saying, "Missed you this time, let's try again soon." By going through the steps, you were able to take a situation that could have left you upset and possibly move it to a more positive way forward. Once we are being mindful about our bioresponses, then we can begin managing our emotions. That data also helps us to form better social relationships through compassion and empathy. Empathy is when we understand another person's emotions and triggers. All three together help us make more well-informed decisions, which propels us towards success in whatever we are trying to achieve. I would compare it to being a well-rounded individual. You don't rely on book smarts or common sense or just street smarts. It's necessary to use all aspects of our interactions with the outside world to make us better informed people when we need to communicate effectively. Bioresponses, mindfulness, and managing your emotions all feed into our emotional intelligence. They are like cogs in a machine that work together to move us forward. Emotional intelligence is important because it influences our decision-making skills. When we are aware of other people and how triggers and emotions affect them, we can then tailor our responses to the needs of others, making communication more effective for everyone involved. Thinking of being a well-rounded individual plays into our emotional intelligence, or EI as I will refer to it. It is how we handle emotions both internally, ourselves, and externally, other people. Our brains are never done growing. We all have neuroplasticity, that ability to grow and train our brains through new experiences and situations. The more we experience those new situations, the more opportunities we have to grow our EI. You may say, what makes up our emotional intelligence? Well, I see it as 5 components. The first component would be self-awareness. When you understand what triggers your body's bioresponses by being mindful, you can choose better responses to outside stimuli, communicate more effectively, and retrain the brain to think of things in a different way. This leads me into number 2, which would be self-regulation. This is what mindfulness helps us gain. By knowing that we respond in predictable ways to stressors, we can begin to choose different responses by reframing the situation. Remember the coffee house scenario? By evaluating the situation, we were able to slow down and realize that it didn't have to be a bad thing that our friend didn't show up. That, in turn, may lead us to the number 3 component, which would be motivation. That is wanting to reach for your goal or being willing to try for something that previously may have seemed out of reach. By keeping a positive attitude, you are already one step closer to reaching for those goals. When you are able to find your inner motivation, it becomes a little bit easier to look ahead instead of behind. Number 4 is empathy. Empathy is an important aspect because while we can be aware of how we respond to stressors and triggers, if we can put ourselves in someone else's shoes, we can begin to understand what they may be going through or understand that they may have had outside influences that affect how they respond to us. Going back to that coffee house scenario again, if we understood more about our friend's need to cancel, we can determine how best to respond to their needs. Every situation is different, and no 2 people have the same response. That leads me into number 5, which is social skills. These are critical for being able to communicate effectively with coworkers, friends, relationship partners, etc. It might seem silly, but learning how to actively listen and learning how to speak clearly will take you very far in solving conflicts. The importance of listening to what someone else is saying and what they are not saying is valuable. It gives us insight into the other person's brain processes. So, now that we've got all of these pieces, how do we fit it all together? How do we connect those puzzle pieces? I'd like to use a trampoline as an analogy. The canvas center has a certain amount of stretch and bounce to it, but by adding in the springs, which I will call our mindfulness component, to the frame is sturdy, the bioresponses, we can't change that, we can control how far we bounce and stretch, which would be managing our emotions, effectively managing how well the trampoline works. If you don't have a base that you can understand or that isn't sturdy, you may bounce in the wrong area and fall. If your springs are damaged or missing, the canvas might rip or break when it's bounced on. But when all 3 work together in harmony, our neuroplasticity expands to help us do more, go farther, and achieve our dreams. This is akin to a gymnast being able to jump higher, farther, and do more stunts. So back to decision making. How does all of this stuff affect it? Well, when you know what your bioresponses are, you can utilize mindfulness strategies to give you a better ability to form educated responses to things that may have stopped you in your tracks before, or that were avoided because they were difficult, or even the ability to not give in to someone else's wishes and stand up for yourself. That efficacy helps to guide the outcome and find new ways to thrive and connect. In conclusion, if you are able to identify your bioresponses, use mindfulness exercises, and adjust your response, it will benefit the outcomes of various situations and help your brain learn to be more effective at responding to outside stressors. When you are able to manage your emotions and be empathetic to others' bioresponses and emotions. It makes you a more effective communicator. Being a more effective communicator helps grow your emotional intelligence, which is a fabulous tool to help you reach your goals and dreams. You are retraining your brain to have a thriving mindset. Thank you for coming to my Gen Talk and have a great day.